What is that mechanism? Why do I continue to do things that I know are not supporting me, but I can't seem to get out of that loop? There is a dual complementary balance between what we call the head and the heart. When you feel that stagnation or that friction or even contraction, it's an evolutionary impulse to grow beyond the identity that we have formed in our mind. And we're just gonna be trying to cope with the distress that we feel inside without ever actually identifying the reason it's there in the first place. We have to create the distinction between...
Ronnie, it's amazing to sit back down with you, brother. The first time we got back together and that we recorded was in Bali.
Yeah.
There was some awesome, interesting character building things that you were going through as well. Some big things that were happening with my life. Now sitting here together in Austin, we're kind of like reconvening, being able to catch up again, which has been really good, but also really cool having a snapshot now of what is it that we're both learning in this journey through life and how we can share this with others as well. So for us to start this conversation, I want to start with what got brought up before we hit record, and that is integrity. So I want to be able to know, what does integrity mean for you?
Yeah.
And how do you be integrous through living life?
Wow. Okay, great way to start. Yeah. So the word integrity has deep meaning to me personally. As you know, I was raised in martial arts. So from the age of 4 all the way to now, my 38 revolution around the sun is coming up in 2 months. And so being a martial artist my entire life and also teaching students for my, my early adult life, the word integrity is like the same as the word honor to like a Japanese culture, the samurai culture. The word honor is everything. And so that's how I think of integrity, but I have a few different angles on it. So first of all, integrity is just doing what you say you're gonna do, being who you are being. It's like your thoughts, your words, your actions, those are all in alignment, they're congruent, they're coherent to the best of your ability. That's what being in integrity basically means. I am who I am. I am who I say that I am. And if maybe I'm not in full integrity, I have the integrity to get better or to put my best foot forward, that kind of thing, right? Authenticity, authentic, transparent, the qualities of a good human. And then, but the other piece about it, which I think is even more interesting and addresses a lot of the integrity issues that people have and a lot of the subconscious conflicting software programs that we have that we may not know why we self-sabotage ourselves. We may not know why we have competing desires or why we're out of integrity with ourselves, but we know that we're an honest, truthful, good person. This is where it gets more interesting, especially when you start studying trauma and things of this nature. At the level of the nervous system, integrity really means integration. So the ability to integrate the nervous system, meaning, let's say, your brainwave state, getting out of stress response, sympathetic overload, hyper stress states, getting out of distress and getting into what we call the parasympathetic, rest, relaxation, digestion, restoration, these kind of things. And we could go deeper into all that. But to actually integrate the nervous system means that we have to be in alignment between our thoughts, our words, and our actions. So we have to practice these things every day in our life. And we also have to be aware of, again, the subconscious programs that are playing out in our mind, in the backdrop of our mind. Otherwise, we're going to have certain things that compete against that ability to be integrated. So just in a nutshell, integrity and integration actually mean the same thing. So for example, you might have a certain experience like an ayahuasca ceremony, a plant medicine, psilocybin, MDMA experience. And it's like, it's revelatory, it's rapturous, right? It's very clarifying in a lot of ways. But then why do we not practice what we learned in those ceremonies or that from a coaching session with someone or some kind of epiphany that we got? Why is it so difficult to actually practice those things? Well, then that actually becomes a deeper exploration into what integration actually is. But just in a nutshell, to me, at the level of your nervous system, physiologically, The word integrity actually means integration. And to the degree that we're integrated as a human being, mind, body, and soul, is the degree that we're going to have inner peace, is the degree that we're going to have a down-regulated autonomic nervous system. But to the degree that we're not integrated between our thoughts, our words, our actions, if those things are not congruent or congruent enough, the actual physiology of the body is at it registers that as a stress response because it's compartmentalized. So we're not actually whole. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I mean this physiologically. It's not that we're not whole physically, but within ourselves, we have competing elements or compartments. And so the nervous system is in a stress response to the degree that we're not integrated.
Okay, so I want to unpack this, and I think the best way to do this is use myself as an example. So what was really interesting, when we recorded last time, had I sold the company or is it before?
You just sold the company.
Right, okay, so this has been super interesting because it's been 4 months? I think it's been like about 4 months.
Only
okay.
4 months, wow.
Crazy, I know, super quick. So in that time, interesting for me, I had a good idea with what I wanted to do post that chapter of my life. And I really quickly moved into what I thought was exactly what I wanted to do moving forward. And what was interesting, because this has only happened in the last less than 24 hours of us having this conversation right now, was I got on the plane to come here, and that space and time and kind of like just the kind of like perspective that I put myself into traveling by myself, I was able to sit and think and literally journal on a plane and in the airports and all of this stuff. And I knew there was literally something that was not integrous within myself, with what I was doing, how I was doing, like that feeling of offness.
Yeah.
Something's off. Something doesn't feel right. And it was really interesting how then having that space for me to start thinking things through, I was having these epiphanies. I was having these different perspectives of like a perspectival knowing that I was coming across, that I was like, oh, that's what's going on. Oh, that was the thing that's wrong. Oh, that's the thing that I should be doing. And it, like, things started to click again.
Yeah.
And so as you were sharing this with me right now, I'm doing two things. I'm being a selfish prick and thinking of myself and how I can use this immediately upon myself, but then also wanting to be completely coherent and present with our conversation right now. So I'm kind of like walking this line to be able to best do it. And so when it comes to not bullshitting ourselves,
Yes.
okay, let's go down this path. This is one path and then we'll swing back to the others. When it comes to not bullshitting ourselves and knowing what is integrity to us and what we need to be doing to be in integrity, how do you think we best do that?
Okay, well, there's a few different angles. I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. The first thing is the obvious, which is we always know when we're bullshitting ourselves. So when people that have addictions are not oblivious to this. Now, we could be going down a path or have habitual habits that the impact of it is not obvious to us, right? We don't age 10 or 20 years overnight. Somebody doesn't get morbidly obese overnight. This is a gradual progression that happens. I never understood personally how people could let themselves go like that. Like, I look in the mirror every day. You know, right? Like I brush my teeth, I see myself, I can see that. But I also have noticed for years, I had been under a lot of stress. And so there was bags under my eyes and like underslept and all these kind of things. And it kind of went on for a while, you know, and still even today, I still have, you know, I swing a little bit here and there. And so the impact of our habits don't land on us right out the gate all the time, and we're so busy and we're distracted and our digital devices and all this kind of thing. We are compartmentalized and we're scattered. So the first thing we have to do is we have to create order within our mind and within our external environment. That's the truth of the matter, right? Because if you know that you're doing something that's not supporting you, but you continue to do it, you need to figure out, okay, what is that mechanism? Why do I continue to do things that I know are not supporting me, but I can't seem to get out of that loop? Then I need to actually assess what are the things, the people, places, things, substances in my environment, the inputs that are causing me to become scattered, stressed, distressed, and distracted, and I need to create more order within my environment, within myself. That's number one. And then number two, and really what's going on, again, is that people have subconscious, we, all of us, have subconscious software programs to varying degrees of potency, I should say. So it's a spectrum in terms of like these programs that are running on autopilot and how much of an effect or how much of a hold they have on us and how integrated they become in the framework of what we call our personality, who we believe we are. And that's a whole deep dive in of itself. So if you really want to get to the root of it, we have to create the distinction between the I and the it. And a lot of times what happens, especially in the personal development, trauma-informed space, is that these things get kind of overlapped and people say, oh, this is just an aspect of me. Like, this is the aspect of me that's very impressionable, very distractible, very scattered, almost has like addictive tendencies. And it's like, okay, I just need to love that part of me more. I would say we need to actually create a little bit more space to realize that that's not actually a part of you. That's a program that you've adopted or have self-manufactured as a coping mechanism or as a mechanism of escaping the responsibility of actually being who you really are. Does that make sense?
It does.
So the actual answer, the spiritual answer, is that we have to discover who we actually are. And who we are is an infinite being. So everything else that gets in the way of that or distracts us from that is the program. And so, yeah.
Really quickly, I love that you're joining us on the podcast. And if you haven't yet, I have a YouTube channel, which is our main hub. This is where we have all the episodes so you can watch the conversations and join each episode to get all of the best content, the best insights. So click over to YouTube, go to the Christopher Dufey channel, as I would love for you to be able to join us there.
No, this is really good. So because I think there are steps in between the ultimate truth and the relative truth,
right,
when we start looking at this. And the ultimate truth is, yes, we are all one, right? Like we could peel that onion back and get right back to the source. And there is just like, well, when I look upon myself, like let's say when I go into like a non-dual meditation, for example, it's like, well, when I look upon myself, where am I? Who is witnessing? There is no witness, there is just witnessing. And so there's there. But then there's also like, okay, the layer of those onions continue to go outwards. And then there is me right now having a conversation with Ronnie, having these thoughts. And then there is these parts of me, as you're saying as well, which I really like, because having that subject-object relationship, like peeling that space back and go, okay, hang on, that thing that I'm doing or that person that I'm being or that aspect of my character right now is not me. And I don't want the listener or viewer right now to be like, oh, okay, I've got to immediately jump from where I am all the way to this, there's only oneness, this non-dual aspect. What do you think are the steps in between? Like, how can we go from this right now of backwards from the ultimate truth to the relative truth? So if the relative truth right now is I'm having a conversation with Ronnie and I'm having these negative thoughts about myself because I'm feeling out of integrity because of certain things, and I do want to swing back and talk to, especially the how do I stay to doing what I say that I'm doing, because I think that's really important, really important. But also, what are the steps in between that as well?
Wow. Well, on that piece of integrity, that is the quantum key code. That is the thing that unlocks everything else. But that's a bit of a journey, as you're alluding to. So with these subconscious software programs, you might notice that they're all at the level of the mind. So all of this is happening at the level of the mind. So the simple answer is that we need to descend from the mind chatter, from the mental realm, and we need to get embodied. You know, it's like the longest journey is from the head to the heart. So the simple idea is that we need to get into our heart. And where's our heart? Our heart's in our body. But it's not about living from our heart, from an emotional space. It's actually being fully physicalized, fully in our physical body. And the heart is just a part of that. Our emotions are a part of that. And people say, well, you just got to get into your heart. You got to follow your heart. I don't think that's really true, because what if your heart is wounded? What if you've had a heartbreak that hasn't fully healed? What if you have repressed and suppressed emotions from your father, your mother, a past lover, that hasn't fully been resolved, healed, and integrated? Then your heart might lead you astray. So we have to go beyond that, but it's all part of the journey, right? So the simple answer is we need to get physically embodied, and there's so many different modalities for doing that. And that's part of being in integrity. Because again, being in integrity is being integrated. It's very difficult to distinct between competing software programs at the level of the mind where, for example, so say that we've decided from our mind, okay, I'm going to do this.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm going to do this. But then maybe there's a prior mental program that says, no, wait, I'm going to do this. And so all these decisions and timelines that we've created at the level of the mind, they all start bumping up against each other. And we call that resistance, or we call that limbic friction, right? And then the nervous system has its own response patterns to that. It's either going to be fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so we lock up, whatever the response is, and we don't know how to handle it, so we get paralyzed. These are all indications and symptoms that we have competing subconscious software programs that are now rising to the surface. And so the first step is that we have to learn how to regulate the nervous system in order to actually witness the program themselves. Not necessarily like get in there and try to figure it out, because if you're not a psychic surgeon and you're not adept at that, you might fumble around and just get all stressed out trying to deal with these programs and fighting it like a Chinese finger trap. So the first step is that you have to, like, contemplative meditation is good for this, but learning how to regulate the nervous system through different types of modalities, different types of breath work, meditation. You have to have a certain type of diet and supplement routine that supports the optimization of your physical body. Emotional intelligence techniques, EFT. It all starts to come together when you look at it from a human optimization perspective. You have to get the physical body down, taking care of the physical body in all the different ways. The mental body, emotional and spiritual.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah,
That's
please.
really good. I got told recently, literally like a week ago, I was having a session with this lady and she goes, "You're way too head-led and you need to be more heart-led. Everything that you need to do moving forward from here needs to be more heart-led." Like, she was like, "You're amazing at business. You're really intellectual. You're really switched on. It's a huge part of your strength, but I could be overusing it in times, and I'm not coming from the heart." And I was like, okay, I feel that, and I feel that is true for sure. And then I was thinking about, okay, well then how do I become more heart-led? What does that mean? How do I have a pragmatic, useful, purposeful use to this kind of feedback that I'm getting right now as well? What comes up for you when I say that to you? What do you think is kind of like the process?
Well, I think the feminine is intrinsically more heart-based, meaning they're more feelings-based. They're guided by their feelings. So that makes sense that a woman told you that, right?
Yeah.
I did all the masculine, feminine polarity work and the spiritual community and all that stuff. And I've gone through all of that myself. You know what I found? I actually am far more effective and efficient and potent and powerful and authentic in my masculine core. That doesn't mean that I'm over intellectualizing. I think that might be her point. Like that there is a dual complementary balance between what we call the head and the heart. But again, it comes back to my original point. How integrated are we in our physical body? Because if we're fully integrated in the physical body, all these different compartments of the body take care of themselves. The mind is part of the body. In fact, the mind is the body. The subconscious mind is reflecting itself and expressing itself through our physical body and vice versa. So if the mental body is stressed and we're stressed in our mind and contracted, the physical body will follow suit and vice versa, right? So, I think that's a unique journey for everybody. Some people are a little more feminine in their templating or their
makeup.
Yeah, their makeup. That's right. Yeah, and some are more feminine, and some sometimes we explore and swing. But I think as men, we're more rooted in a particular orientation.
Yes.
And so that's the foundation. So as me as a man, I can do all the exploration into my feminine and the healing work and feeling my feelings. But if I'm not rooted and anchored in my physical body, then I'm not going to be effective. And I might get lost, which I have in, different experiences of going through that type of work.
Yep. This is really good. If a man is, and I want to come back to that. There's something I do want to nail right now. In being integrous with me doing what I say that I'm going to do, and I feel like this is where self-esteem really actually comes from, especially with the conversation I'm having myself. Am I going to do what I'm saying to myself that I'm going to do? Because I'm really the only one that's keeping score at the end of the day.
Totally.
And so if I say to myself, I'm going to wake up and go to the gym this morning, and I slept in because I barely slept because I was so goddamn jet lagged, do you know what I mean? I would have been out of integrity.
Right.
And I find it, please push back against me, because I could be taking it too far as well, where it's like I'm so strict, disciplined, whatever kind of word that you want to put upon it, with myself.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to go down that slippery slope of, it's just okay, not for today. Do you mean? And suddenly you're just making all of these compromises, and you're doing all of these little sleights of hand to kind of bullshit yourself.
Yes.
And I think that's like when you come to the point of like, how does someone get to being really overweight? And it was interesting because for myself, having been extremely overweight at one point in my life, it was very much a case of, how did I get there? And it was bullshitting myself every single day in little moments.
Yes.
Oh no, I can eat this now.
Yes.
Oh, I can do this.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And it's now flipping it around and being of the character, the identity that I am today, that is, well, this is how I show up. This is what I do. But also what I find interesting and what I want to kind of like unpack with you here is, well, then how do we go through life and being able to change our identity, consciously change our identity, or being malleable to the changes that are naturally going to happen as well? Because I'll just use another personal example before you unpack it. The case of Lauren, my wife, and I, quite literally, we've come together in the past couple of weeks going through some really hard stuff, but coming now and just being like, I'm more in love with my wife after over 11 years of marriage right now. I feel like I'm literally seeing this new woman.
Wow.
And it's been really interesting because from this kind of like a bit over 10-year cycle that we've just been through, which was me leaving from Sydney to Dubai, do you know what I mean? Going through the entire journey that I've spoken to ad nauseum before, and then selling the company, coming to like this new chapter of our life, and then actually turning to each other and be like, oh my God, you're a different person. And I hadn't acknowledged her for this woman that she had become, and she had acknowledged me for this man that I had become. And so we just like completely reconnected. We were literally just saying, like last night we were messaging each other when I was awake from jet lag. It was like, I feel like I'm dating you again.
Amazing.
Do you know what I mean? And after 18 years of knowing each other, after 4 children, 5 pregnancies, all of these things that we've gone through, it's like, oh my God, I'm dating this woman again, and being able to then see the reflection. So I want to kind of like bring this back home with it. And it's like, when we go through an identity change, not with just ourselves, but with other people as well, how do we best acknowledge it, and how do we be integrous as going through that process?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's beautiful, and that there's a really interesting thing in there too around identification. So I've been thinking about this lately, actually, so it's good that it just came up. So the things that we identify, we develop an identification to. This is how the ego mechanism works. We identify something in our environment, and as we continue to identify it, because it's a repetitive, let's say, input, it's a consistent thing in our environment that we're identifying, it then becomes part of our identity the more we identify it. Then we start to identify with it. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
This is how addictions work from more of a psychological perspective. And so and this is a great example, in the case of you and your wife, and I don't know all the dynamics, I have my own version of it going on right now. When we identify with an orientation or a version or a form of, let's say, our partner, it's almost like we kind of get stuck in time. Even though we're dynamic, fluid beings and we have so much going on, it's very easy to get stuck in, like, our identity gets crystallized, and who that person is to us and vice versa gets kind of like, it gets formed. It gets like, there's like a formation there. Yeah. And so that stagnation that can occur is an evolutionary energy that wants to break out of the mold, break out of that form, which is really like a mental mold, right? So knowing that when you feel that stagnation or that friction or even contraction, it's an evolutionary impulse to grow beyond the identity that we have formed in our mind. And so what we get to do, is we get to disidentify with the people, places, things, substances that we want to change our relationship to. This is all about relationship. And you find external relationships are just a mirror to the relationship that you have with yourself. And sometimes we need to disentangle ourselves from those relationships in order to come back to ourself. Because there's something inside of us that's trying to grow, is trying to evolve, is trying to transform. But if we're continuously identifying, then our identity is staying in stasis, it's staying stuck. And something is trying to dislodge us from this holding pattern. And so the disidentification process is just the space that needs to be created between stimulus and response.
How do we do that without having to, like, massively, if it is possible, break down, hit a huge pain, right. Go through a catastrophe, do you know what I mean, for then there to be this, oh, I am someone new, this person is someone new, do you know what I mean? Like, right. And to be able to go through that. Or is it a case of, no, the pain teacher will then allow you to actually do this?
I think you suffer enough until you decide that you don't want to do that anymore. I think we go through pain until we decide that that's not the way that we need to learn. And we can only do that once we've learned the lesson enough times, right? So if this life, if this realm of this world that we live in, this life experience is a school, is an institute for transformation, then we have to really get cognizant of pattern recognition. What are the patterns that are playing out in our life? If we're going to take total responsibility, because this whole thing on integrity is about taking full responsibility for my lived experience. My thoughts, my emotions, my actions, only I have control of that, right? And so if that's true, and if this is an institute for transformation, then I have to get really clear about the patterns that are playing out in my life. And there's a sequence of events that usually happens. But the challenge is it happens in different areas of our life, and we don't always notice the revolving door the reverberating effect that's manifesting itself in different form.
Yep.
Because it's different aspects of our life. So we may have the relationship thing down.
Yep.
Like, okay, cool. I've been in the dojo of that for a while. So now I can see, like with my wife or my spouse, I know if I say this or if I feel this in the environment or she responds this way, then I know how to respond because I've done that dance enough.
Yes.
But then you have your business world, you have your clients, you have your health. You know, sometimes health things manifest out of nowhere that we didn't see coming.
Yep.
Right? It's like, so we have to be able to kind of zoom out of the micro and get into the macro and look at the chessboard of our life and start to see that in every area of our life, there's certain themes, there's certain patterns that play out. And once we have a little bit more of a broad view, then we could go back in. But if we're just in the weeds of everything, trying to put out fires, then we're just going to burn ourselves out. And then that leads to adopting all these coping mechanisms, you know, all the substances, all the digital drugification, the drugs of distraction, the weapons of mass distraction, as Gay Hendricks puts it, all the things, right, that this world gives us in like opulence. And we're just going to be trying to cope with the distress that we feel inside without ever actually identifying the reason it's there in the first place.
Hola, I want to say a big thank you, muchas gracias, for listening to the show. Now, really quickly, this show is growing and it's all thanks to the ratings and reviews. So really quickly, I want to ask, if you have not left a review for the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever else that you listen, take the 30 seconds, please click on over, leave a review, as I really want to hear from you. And I want to know what is the best thing so I can cover in future episodes, what guests to bring in, what questions can I answer for you, what is it that you're getting out of being a part of this show as well. And I just want to say thank you so much for being a part of this show's success. Thank you so much for clicking over, leaving a review. Now let's get back to the episode.
I was thinking before, and this is something that's come up a lot for me, silence and spaciousness are two critical parts to this process, and how that goes directly against the weapons of mass distraction.
Yes.
And how we need, I'm going to talk to myself, sorry, I'm not going to project onto others, how I need to ensure that that cadence of silence and spaciousness and stillness needs to be there for me to actually start to listen to those little voices, those little tappings on the shoulder before it becomes a whack over their head of, hey, this isn't the right thing, this is wrong, or maybe look at this further, and how I need to be able to then continue on that beautiful path of figuring this out as we go along. Because what came up for me recently, and especially when thinking about my relationship with Lauren, was how, this is a really interesting kind of epiphany that I had, was how for love to be there, curiosity must be there as well.
Yes.
And curiosity, always being curious, who is this woman? Who is this person that is in front of me? What's interesting? Like, and just watching that, and I was just like, oh my God, like I get goosebumps thinking about it, because I then want to be curious about everyone in my life. Where's Ronnie at? How are you really doing? What's going on? How can I best serve and support you? And then being able to do it for myself as well. And then being able to like, where's Chris at?
Yes.
What does Chris need? What's holding me back? What am I lying to myself about as well? Because I find it very interesting how I feel like on one hand, I could be this aware dude, do you know what I mean? I do plenty of the work and all this kind of stuff, but God damn it, I've got a really great ability of bullshitting myself. I've got a great ability of self-deceiving myself and having kind of what I would call a lowered contact with reality as to what is, because I'm being fictitious, or I'm just avoiding about what's actually really going on as well.
It's really difficult to stay in that HD crystal clear like sobriety or that like mental, emotional, sober state. Again, because of what we're dealing with, what we're surrounded by, like the dopaminergic impulses that are all around us. It's a Herculean task to stay sober and clear and cognizant and totally honest and transparent all the time. And I'm not even sure that we're supposed to. I think that's part of the whole game. I think that's why we're set up the way we are. Because especially as men, if it wasn't a challenge outside of us that we were trying to like overcome, then you better believe it's something inside of us that we're trying to overcome. So we're not out there hunting down woolly mammoths and the classical like examples, the caveman examples or whatever, the Paleolithic examples that people give, or we're not out fighting wars, hopefully. If we're not out there trying to conquest or put out fires or try to maximize our ability to overcome, then where are we going to direct that energy? Because that masculine energy needs to be directed. Oh, well, then it's probably going to come right back here. And so there's a fine line to that too, right? And everyone's temperament is a little bit different. So you and I are just the same. And I think the thing is, it's not that we're necessarily rigid, it's that we have high standards for ourselves because we know how we understand the game that we're in. We understand what it really requires. We understand the playing field, and we also understand we're infinite beings. So that has its own interesting like pressure to it. So I think the dance is understanding that I am an infinite being and I'm in a finite reality. And so it's like I get to find a way to integrate my infiniteness and also the existential like cap off that I have in this physical body without succumbing to what's the word? It starts with an N. It's like just like entropy. That's a good word to use.
Yeah.
It says succumbing to entropy, like, oh, it's all hopeless and there's nothing I can do.
Oh, like being nihilist.
Nihilism, that's the word I was like, being totally nihilistic, right? Which is actually like a very low dopamine baseline, by the way, which is the same with depression. You have no motivation, no energy, no willpower, no desire to learn anything, because dopamine is the learning molecule. And so you kind of pretty much just give up. And then the other side is that you become hubris and you become hedonistic.
Yes.
And you just become like, oh, I'm here, I'm an infinite soul, I can do anything I want, I'm just dancing between lifetimes, so there's really no repercussions and I'm just going to keep doing it, so it doesn't matter. Those are two extremes.
Let's play a little game right now.
Yeah.
Let's say we're just talking to men right now. Ladies, I don't want to exclude you, but I think it's best and easiest for us to talk about this. And so, group of dudes, and there's a couple of different pendulums that we can look at. There is the pendulum of fatalism, which is, hey, everything is predestined, it's pre-written, this is the way it's going to happen, Lady Fortune, do you know what I mean, has her way. And then there is free will, hey, I'm totally in control of absolutely everything, I will make it happen. The very Western way of thinking of modern day today, of we can achieve whatever we want.
Yeah, creation versus like evolution, kind of like.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, so when it comes to like a fatalistic to kind of like I have full free will viewpoint, and I ask this because where suffering can come from is not understanding this paradox and how to hold the tension between these this paradox right now, because a guy can be sitting, listening, watching us and be like, I want this life, or they have suffering because there's this gap between where they are and where they feel or think that they should be. Right. How do you help alleviate that suffering by kind of like being able to bridge that? Right. That's beautiful. That is the key. So Buddha found that, like the Siddhartha path, like we all have to go through our own Siddhartha path. And Siddhartha was who we know as Buddha, but he wasn't Buddha to start. He was a 29-year-old Indian prince who forewent everything and left the palace and went on this whole aesthetic path and didn't even know why. He just awoke to the trauma of the world and then went on what we call now the Siddhartha path of enlightenment. And so what he found is that ultimately there's a middle way. If you swing to this extreme or this extreme, it's going to lead to suffering, because that's the whole
the whole Buddhism, like, Eightfold Path philosophy is that trying to alleviate suffering. All extremes will cause suffering because they're extreme. They're not integrated. We have to become whole as a human being, right? Wholeness. So what that means is we have to find the center point, right? The center point within us, which is not exactly the heart, but it is the soul, which that's really what we need to get to. Not just the heart of the matter, we need to get to the soul of the matter. That's like the difference of doing MDMA versus doing ayahuasca. MDMA will tap you into your heart. Ayahuasca will take you through the fabric of your soul. That's where I'm at with the whole thing, right? And so it's a balance point. And we typically learn to balance things out by exploring the extremes. You have to explore your edges. You have to test your limits. It's very, especially as men, we have to test our limits and regulate our impulses so that we can master the quote unquote shadow, right? Because that's really what this all comes down to, the integration between the true self and the inauthentic self. And it's not about repressing, oppressing, suppressing, fighting and avoiding, right? That's the way of the quote unquote Western world or the materialistic world. It's a merging of spirit and matter. So we are physically in a physical body, which is really like a biotechnology, a quantum technology, if you really understand how this thing really operates. And it has its own intelligence. And so we as spiritual beings are integrating ourselves with this so that, again, we can become truly integrated. And so I'll pause on that.
Yeah, dude, that's amazing. So if we think of the case, so there was one paradox that I wanted to have a look at with us. The other one, I think especially for men, is the case of striving and achieving, being out on your mission and going out, to conquer, and being here now, content, fulfilled, peace and harmony. How do you feel where we find, do you know what I mean, the middle way, the golden mean, and being able to like navigate these waters of being able to essentially have both?
Thanks for giving me that bridge. You know, it's the balance between dopamine and serotonin, right? It's that motivation to pursue and chart out new territory and achieve things, and again, test our limits and see what's possible. And then also to be content in the moment, to be grateful for all that we have right now, regardless of what the future brings. And, you know, I don't think it's actually so much a paradox. I think it's just that we live in such a hyper stimulated, overwhelmed, just such a friction-based reality. Just again, with all the digital distractions, all the external distractions, all the noise, we get so caught up in all that, and it puts us in kind of a disarray. And so it feels like a paradox, because the world is paradoxical and it's set up in kind of an inverted pattern to how we would naturally operate in an agrarian society within more of an aboriginal kind of, or more of a naturalistic society. You know, which doesn't mean that we forego society or civilization. It just means we live within the nature, within the rhythms and the patterns of nature. So in a more natural kind of setup, right? It goes against our nature is what I'm saying. So once we get back to our nature, which is also a byproduct of getting into nature and balancing out the autonomic nervous system, and our brainwave states and all the things, and we get grounded, we actually get grounded to the earth. That also helps ground our circadian rhythms and our biological rhythms. Our brain starts to get grounded. We become a little more creative than just intellectual, because the right and left hemispheres of the brain start to balance out. We're very left brain centered in this world because that's what this world rewards. Right? Intellectualism. You know, we can keep riffing and ranting on all that, but it all comes back to the same thing. Getting in nature is critical. We have to get connected back to the motherboard of nature, because that's where all the inherent intelligence is.
Mm-hmm. What is the nature of man?
The nature of man.
Yeah. And to give you some time on that one, and just to clarify where I'm kind of like what I'm pointing at is, to know what the nature of something is to know like the form and the function of something. The chair, the function of the chair is for us to be able to sit on. Do you know what I mean? If that thing was made and you use it as a bookshelf, it's a shitty bookshelf because its form and function wasn't made to be a bookshelf.
Right.
It was made to be a chair. And so for us to know what something should be doing,
yes.
is it right to know what the nature of it is? And so therefore for us to live a good life, does it make sense for us to know what the nature of man is?
Right. Yeah, of course. And again, every man is going to be unique, but there is a template. There is a masculine imperative. And so I think the masculine imperative has to do with protecting and providing, but I don't think it can be relegated to this very three-dimensional, like I provide for my family, I protect my family, I protect my community. Yes, but what are we protecting from? What are we providing for? That's where we need to get more advanced and more like multi-dimensional, multidisciplinary, multi-perspectorial, is that the word you use?
Yeah,
I like that word.
Yeah.
In our awareness of what an evolved, awakened masculine man is in this time.
Yes.
So, for example, when I say protect, let's say I'm talking about protecting my female partner.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the obvious thing is that I'm a protector from external threats. But what about protecting her from what lives inside of me? The shadow that lives inside of me.
Yep.
Now you really want to get into like men's work. Oh, well, what's men's work really? Oh, to be a better provider, to have more money, to be, all these, whatever these things.
I gotta say this, I love where you're going with this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and I think it's triggered something inside me. I want to be able to explore this trigger. So much of I'm just going to call it for what it is right now. I am here to learn and evolve. My repulsion to a lot of men's work that I see out there is this super aggressive, I don't want to say hyper
your chest,
masculine,
just
because
yell.
I don't think that's right, but it's like this super aggressive boot camp style. Let's go, pick up logs. Let's wrestle each other. All of this kind of stuff. And I get it. Like there is a time and place for it. But I'm like, I just, that is so one-dimensional. And I feel like it's such a small part to what is really going on, because this is something I've been thinking upon myself. My wife coming to me and literally saying, thank you so much for the life that you've provided us. Like, thank you so much for what you've been able to do, and being able to like say and communicate those things across to me. I was like, oh my God, like as a provider, as a protector, as a husband, as a man, I was like, wow, I feel like I've really ticked the boxes of these big things is what a part of I'm here to do. Also feeling like there are other things that I'm missing as well. And a big part of it was, well, I've got to clean up my shit so that my shit's not getting put onto others also as well. So when it does come to men's work, when it actually does come to like getting to the core, the gestalt of what is actually really going on right now, can you help clarify for me what that actually is?
Well, another thing that none of these men's groups are doing? They're not doing any cleansing, any detoxification, any dietary changes whatsoever. They're not doing anything of that nature, which I've been a professional in the last 15 years as a nutritionist, and been through the entire gamut of that. That's been the foundation of my work. Like you can't get anywhere without that. So there's an epigenetic phenomenon, there's an epi-psychological phenomenon, and an epi-emotional phenomenon for like a father. You have a child that you're birthing, that's taking on your DNA, and the encoded signatures, the information that's in that DNA, epigenetically, epipsychologically, epi-emotionally, is being transferred in some way, some sort, over to your child. And also over to your female partner as she receives you sexually.
Yep.
That's another thing that people don't understand. Like, what's the function of a womb?
Yep.
Is it just to birth a baby? No, it's a multi-dimensional like portal, and it takes in energy and harbors energy and transmutes it and amplifies it. Right? That's a whole other subject. But just I'm saying that for everyone to like get more of an expanded awareness, and also like repeat your question.
Like when it comes to men's work,
Yes.
what is the essence, the core, the root, the soul, the gestalt of what it is that we need to do? And I know there is many multidimensional parts.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so like with all that said, all that key, this term divine masculine is really important to me. And a lot of people might feel turned off by it because they don't know what divine actually is. They've never experienced divinity. They've never experienced anything that's truly sacred.
Can you define divine and masculinity, and then what divine masculinity is for me?
I mean, ultimately, like masculinity in its pure sense is divine. It's like when we say divine feminine.
And what's its manifestation?
Integrity, integration, congruency, transparency, potency, fluidity. Ultimately, it represents all the highest qualities of the integration between the masculine and the feminine. So strength, but without rigidity. Discipline and fluidity. So if you think of like what the feminine is in her highest, and you think of what the masculine is in his highest, you blend those two together in a masculine body, then you have the divine masculine in human form.
Very well.
So it's almost like, if you could go here with it, it's the angel nature in us. It's the archangel nature in us. When you see a woman who's like, we would like, wow, she's a queen. That's kind of the archetype or the embodiment that I'm speaking to. And so as far as like men's work, I don't hear many people talking about it outside of the spiritualized community, but the problem with that is it's all effeminate. So I think these are the two extremes that we're kind of given to choose from, red pill or blue pill. Do we do the caveman, Paleolithic, just beat our chest, and the middle ground to that is like, then we do the men's work where we're just crying in each other's shoulders and like almost like recycling childhood trauma with our father and our mother and just triggering those things, and like almost like it's performative in a lot of ways. That's the way that I've seen it. No judgment on anybody. I know everyone's process is unique, and I've been there, but it almost feels like a little performative in a way. And then you have this other side that has just kind of gone so far into the feminization or the effeminate side of their like just being in their feelings all the time. So then now you just have these extremes. And so what I'm talking about is getting out of this and going up here, which you can only do through here. That makes sense.
I want to jump in and say thank you for listening and supporting the show, as at the moment we don't run any ads on the show. And if you're getting value, if you're loving the show, then I invite you right now to share this episode. Share this directly to a friend or share it on your socials. And when you do share it on social, please tag me so I can personally say thank you to you. My social handle is @Chris Dufey. That's Chris Dufey, as it means a huge deal to me, as this show is about us coming together as a community to help each other grow, as I really do believe that a rising tide lifts all ships. So take a screenshot, grab the link and share it with a friend that you think could get value out of this together. It will put a huge smile on my face, and I very much appreciate it.
I feel like I'm picking up what you're putting down, and this is really good, because I think a lot of the time when it comes to like men's work, for me it was very ambiguous. It's very like, well, what is that? Like, what, like, and I was like, define it for me. Give me something I can work with, I can hold, I can palpate. I can grasp firmly to be able to actually use in my life. And I was not getting that. I was not getting that feeling of what that really looks like as well. And it kind of feels like there's a lot of circle jerk going on around there as well, where I was just like, I don't.
No, I agree.
Am I the broken one? I don't get it. Fuck it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I agree. I'm glad you're bringing this up. Like, I've never gravitated towards any of it. So I'm not someone who's been through a lot of men's work. I've done more work as a man than most men that I know who do men's work. My thing for me and my journey, the work that I do, is it's about mastering the human experience. I'm in a spiritual dojo 24/7. That's my life. And any man that's on a sacred mission he's in the dojo. You're in the dojo. That's why you and I, we like, yeah, I know you. Yeah, I get you. Because we live in the dojo, whether we know it or fully recognize it or not. And so for me, that is a path of mastery. I'm not here to dabble.
It's really funny when you say that. It wasn't that long ago, and I just had this feeling of like, I don't want another dark night of the soul. I'm tired. Come on, cut me a break. And then I was like, all right, no, this is what I signed up for. This is the journey. This is what I do. All right, do you know what I mean? Like, I kind of had to like talk myself back in, coach myself back through it, go back into it. That's a good thing. But I also understand when someone's just like, oh, I'm tired of it, dude.
Spiritually exhausted.
Yeah, like, I want to rest. Like, quite literally, physically, I want to be able to actually rest. You know what I mean? Like, having 4 young children and our youngest one still isn't sleeping that great. It was really interesting because, like, going on this shooting trip right now, I was like, really looking forward to sleeping in a bed with just myself, no distractions. Do you know what I mean? And then it was really funny because I was super jet lagged last night. So I was just like, all right, here we go again. This is all good. So if we kind of like get down to the crux of it, Ronnie, and we're like, what does someone really walk away from with this conversation that we've had today? What are those things? Like, what are the things that you would be like, all right, if we were to create a worksheet from today's conversation, do you know what I mean? Like, what would that actually look like, and what's the actual things that are doable?
It's a great question. It's a tall order, just because my mental frameworks are so expansive, yet like there is a lot of cataloging that I've done in my work. It's hard to like simply explain. It does take, a conversation to do so. But I'll simplify it like this. You have a physical body, you have a mental body, you have an emotional body, you have a spiritual body. These all must be addressed, and they all must be addressed uniquely. The rules and the roadmap for how to master and optimize the physical body is a little bit different than the mental body. And the emotional body and the spiritual body, they're all their own unique arena. But there are universal principles that apply. But you can't treat each one the same. Like if you could bulldoze through your workout, you can't do that through your emotions. It will swing you in a tsunami because your emotions are water. Your physical body is earth. Your mental body is air. Your spiritual body is fire. So if you understand Chinese medicine, you understand the elemental theory of energy, of the forces that exist within us and outside of us, then you can start to approach your life from an alchemical perspective. Instead of this hyper material perspective, we're just bumping up against ourselves. So, that's like a philosophical, but it's incredibly practical. You just have to understand how to become the alchemist in your own life. And that's a journey each person has to subscribe to. And if you resonate to this and you get this, you're like, okay, I get what he's saying. I need to take a bit of a journey. This is a lot of the work that I do with men that I'm starting to do, like in a program that I'm leading at a spiritual dojo for awakened masculinity. This is ultimately what I'm going to be taking a group of men through for 12 weeks. And then we'll see how that evolves over time. But this is what I've been taking myself through for years upon years. So again, just to break that down, you have to know that there's 4 quadrants to the human experience: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And then there's an integration of those things together. And that integration is your mission and your purpose. But it has to be approached from an integrative, holistic impulse. Where's that impulse come from? Is it your mind? Is it your heart? Is it your body, your instincts, your reactions? Like, what is that impulse? It's your soul. But you can't really get in touch with your soul, let alone sustain the kind of that soul-based guidance system, intuitive intelligence, if you will, if you're not in your physical body. So it starts with the physical, and it ends with the physical always, because we're in a physical body, in a physical dimension. So I could go do ceremony, and I could go travel those astral realms, but I'm coming back to my body. I'm integrating back to my body at all times. So that's kind of my thing on
what
that.
I really like what comes out when you say that as well. Like, a lot of people kind of like poo-poo the body, and they're like, oh, I'm a spiritual person, but I've got like this meat suit on, and it's kind of like they're dissing the meat suit. I'm like, hang on. We live in this physical world right now. Like, this is the dimensional reality of what's going on. And yeah, totally, dude. Like, fucking, I love going to the astral realms and going to those other dimensions as well. Like, that's totally cool. But what I haven't loved is the inability to integrate to how do I become a better human right here, right now for you.
Yeah.
That's what I care about.
Totally.
That's what I care about. And I think that's why as well I want to speak to, like, let's unpack these models, for example. Like, I use that word a lot because for me, a framework, a model gives me something to be able to use where I can conceptualize, but take something from a concept into something extremely practical as well. And actually, help me unpack a model right now. So if we were to actually think like the body, mind, and spirit, for example, right? And if we wanted to master the body, mind, and the spirit, what initially comes up to you? Like, what percolates up to what does actually mastering body, mind, and spirit look like?
It's simple and it's easy, straightforward. It's called discipline. The word discipline, the etymology of discipline is discipleship. So a lot of people poo-poo discipline. Like, oh, discipline's hard work, everything, I just manifest, everything's easy. Oh, but is it really? Is easy really easy? Is hard really hard? We have a lot of identifications and a lot of like emotional interpretations of what words mean. But very few people actually study language or study words. So when I looked at discipline and I looked at discipleship, I was like, oh wow. So discipline is actually sacred. And whatever I am doing, whatever I'm identifying with repeatedly, I'm in discipleship too.
Okay, discipline, what else?
Discipline and, again, integrity.
Yep.
The integrity is everything.
Yeah.
And you can't, we're all disciplined at something.
Yeah.
Everybody brushes their teeth, everybody looks at their phone. A lot of people look at pornography.
Sorry, something just comes up for me right now. Sorry to derail you, but like, is it actually not a case of initially looking at what's a model for me to be able to have mastery over body, mind, and soul?
Yeah.
But it's actually a model over how do I have mastery of discipline? How do I have mastery of integrity?
Yeah.
How do I have mastery of what else?
Well, I think mastery becomes more of like a...
Keep going.
Mastery becomes more of an automatic response the more you practice it. It's just like discipline. It's like the more you practice it, then it becomes a second muscle. It just becomes an automatic, integrative aspect of your being. Like, you don't have to become disciplined, you are disciplined. And that's a transferable thing. It transfers to other elements of our life. We just may be more comfortable in certain areas of our life with that than we are in certain others. For me, business, I know how to do business. It's not my favorite thing. I get bored, and it's just the numbers and all the structure. It's kind of boring, but that doesn't mean I'm not good at it or I'm not disciplined. When I work out, when I train, in my relationships with my body, like with my work, I'm super disciplined. It's a transferable thing. So that's a conscious thing we do have to toggle. It doesn't just automatically happen, right? Again, discipleship, meaning whatever that I'm identifying with, whatever I'm practicing, is what's neurochemically, what's neuropathically going to be entrained. So that creates the gravitation towards the behavior, right? Creates that dopaminergic anticipation and that reward signaling towards carrying out that behavior. That's indicating what I have trained myself to be disciplined with.
That was really good. All right, that totally makes sense for me. This has been amazing. Our conversations are also really good, and I'm looking forward to the roles getting reversed and you grilling me with questions as well.
I'm looking forward to that too.
Before I let you go, can you please tell the viewer, the listener, if you're joining us on YouTube, podcast, wherever you are, what are you coming out with?
Sure. Well, I have this 12-week program, Spiritual Dojo for Awakened Masculinity. That is going to launch mid-April, so April 14th or so. So whenever this podcast comes out, and then I have a bunch of online courses. There's a lot of things in the work. I'm working on 2 programs. The nervous system healing and the nervous system repair and recovery roadmap. That's an online course that I'm creating. And then the pornography recovery roadmap is a self-guided online video course that I'm creating. And then there's so much, but I'm just like in incubation right now. Like I'm incubating with everything that I'm sharing.
Yeah.
I'm incubating it all right now. I'm letting it just kind of build.
Amazing.
And then I think in the summer, there's going to be a lot of things coming down the pipeline.
I appreciate it, Ronnie. Thank you for jamming with me today, brother.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me in this episode. I really, truly hope that you have enjoyed this. Now, if you haven't subscribed to the show, please do so, because it would be a bummer if you'd miss out on the amazing episodes that are going to be coming. And one of the best ways for you to be able to support the show is to leave a review and to be able to share it out on social. And if you do share it out on social, please tag me. My handle is @Chris Dufey. That's Chris Dufey, as I would love to say a personal thank you for you sharing it out and for you to join us on the show as well. And as always, thank you so much. I feel privileged, I feel thankful, I feel grateful. I feel really blessed being able to do this and being able to have you join us as we figure this stuff out that we call life at the end of the day, and being able to do it with amazing conversations that we do here in this show together as well. So I'm wishing you an amazing day, and I'm really looking forward to us coming together in the next episode.